All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of DFS office hours. Today is Saturday, January 4th of 2025. And looking ahead here, we have a ton of DFS action coming at you today. We had college football showdown already this morning. We had NHL showdowns get going. We have more NHL action. We have NBA action, NFL action, and there is just a ton of DFS to play over the weekend with week 18 of the NFL regular season finishing up here. So super fun time to be playing DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there's a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual support channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do the show on Saturdays here at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. As far as questions go, we do have one question to get us started. We'll definitely do a slate demo, and then we will answer any questions that are coming in live. So let me get SaberSim up, and we will get started with our first question of the day, which came in from Great White Shark in Discord. So you got SaberSim up, cool beans. All right, first question. NBA DFS always have positive and competitive post-contest sim ROIs. But on a very bad streak the past 2 weeks, keep having losing days, and only metric that seems to lag behind. Good question. Let's jump over to NBA for today. Saturday, NBA, main slate. All right, let's go to build. So a couple ways to do this. Is to increase your minimum salary. Okay. So we have a little bit of like a range here. We don't make this too tight because we don't want to lead to failed builds and things like that. So minimum 48,000, max 50K. You can always increase this, right? Increase it from 48,000 to 49,000, right? Increase it from what's going on here? Increase it from 49,000 to 49.5, right? You can even go more restrictive, right? And go higher, right? So this is one easy way to do it. Another way to do it, and we'll demo this. I'll just build 500 lineups for this demo. So number one, I'm running this build, right? 49.5. And then number two, we'll talk about this in the post build. So let's let these lineups run. Okay, so I have this average projection aggregate metric, right? 293.02 in this Saber. When I expand the lineups, I'm able to see how many lineups are in my pool, how many lineups are in my trash, etc. Right? So I go to this filter option, and then I go down to this one that says projection. And let's say I turn this on, right? Projection greater than 258. It's just a number to start with. So it puts 3 lineups in the trash. Okay. Well, what if we increase this, right? What if we increase this to 265? And let's go a little bit higher, 271. So here, you know, what I'm trying to do, right, is I'm trying to trash lineups, the lowest projected lineups in my pool, just to make sure that some of those lineups aren't sneaking into my top 20 to effectively just say, hey, I don't want to consider these lowly projected lineups, even if they grade out well sometimes. And by doing that, sometimes what can happen is you end up increasing your sim average score just by getting rid of some of the lowest sims, right? So you see this work a little bit more like when you use contest sim ROI. Right now we're using Saber score, and projected score is a variable in Saber score, which is why I think we're not seeing much of an effect. But you will see the effect sometimes if you use contest sims. It's kind of the same way. Like, say you're trying to target, a high scoring game script, right? So what you do is you increase the team totals in the team tab. And then what we do, right, is we basically ignore some of the lowest scoring game sims in our database. Kind of the same line of thinking, right? It's like, hey, well, if we just get rid of some of the lowest projected lineups, then that just raises the mean, and then we just kind of zone in on some of those higher projected lineups in this case, right? So those are like two simple, easy ways to increase your sim average score that I would really recommend checking out. So the salary and the lineup, post-build lineup filter are where I would focus. All right, so good stuff there. Why don't we build some lineups for the NFL showdown coming up in a few hours? So we got this Cleveland-Baltimore game. This game is honestly, I haven't looked into it too much. I don't know if Baltimore is playing for anything or not tonight. I will definitely check that out before the slate starts. I know the Cleveland Browns are heavily depleted and on their fourth quarterback and on their third running back. And this is why the team total disparity is so high, right? We have Deontay Foreman starting. We have Bailey Zapp starting. We have Jordan Akins, right? So Chubb's out, Ford's out, Winston's out, DTR's out, right? They're on their fourth quarterback, and Njoku's out, right? So the team is obviously heavily depleted. Now, I don't know what Baltimore's doing. Does Baltimore have to win? Is Baltimore, resting their starters? I'm not 100% sure, right? I'm not up to date. You could probably just find that information out by just doing a Google search, who is playing for what in week 18. I bet if you Googled that you could find something there. So I'm just going to trust projections here for the sake of this, right? So one thing I've talked about here is just lowering minimum salary. So going to lower my minimum a little bit. And one thing I also like to do, I'm just going to set a filter for don't show players with projection that aren't projected. That way I just get this line gray out, right? One thing I like to do, because we typically use geometric mean here, right, is standardize my lowest owned players, right? So the idea with this is that, you really, if a player has a zero, whatever ownership, well, then that's going to ruin the geometric mean formula. So you kind of want to just standardize these if you want to put them all to 1. Normally what I do is I just put the flexes to 2, and then I put the captains to 1. I think in DFS in these days, more and more people are taking shots on punt plays, I would call them, quote unquote, punt plays. And a punt play is just somebody that is probably not going to do good, but could potentially do good and obviously be a very key piece to a unique lineup. So I think those players at the bottom just get more ownership in general. So I'm okay bumping them to 2%. All right. So standardized my captains as well. And now ready to run lineups, right? So I would run my lineups here. And I have a couple entries lined up. So just going to use this contest sim. So while this runs, you guys can do this in general, right? Say build is running. Okay, great. I'm going to go work on this other build and, get things going over here. So while those lineups run, I can answer this other question. In NBA, anyway, you can select a list of players you like and stack them. So the easiest way to do that would be to go into the rules, go to add new rule, and then do a group manual rule that says use at least X. Maybe you want to say use at least 3, and then you want to go and select 10 players, right? And then, okay, I'm going to go take these top however many guys or whatever list of players you want, click save group. And then now I have a list of 9 players that I'm telling SaberSim to use at least 3. So a rule like this would probably be exactly what you're looking for. So great. We come into NBA, we do some work there, jump back to our NFL slate, and boom, lineups are done, right? Nice, efficient way of getting a lot of DFS things done at the same time is jumping back and forth like that. All right, cool. So we're here. And I run my contest sim. Okay, all things good so far. Going to come in. Let's say I'm building 5 lineups, right? Say I'm building lineups for this. I want to get my exposures. Okay, I want to check out my leverages. Okay, all things good so far. I don't need to see all this information. All right, so what do I do from here, right? I'm sorting by ROI. So first thing I want to do, and you know what, I'm actually going to expand this so I can see the trash. You just come in here and set a filter that says ROI greater than 0, okay? So when I do this, it does take a lot of lineups out of my pool. To me, that's okay. You're mostly like trying to find an optimal lineup most of the time, right? So a couple things, right? If I'm playing multiple contests, I prefer to use rank. That way, if I find the optimal and it's good in more than one lineup, hey, maybe I ship, a couple contests instead of just one, right? Other thing is, you're not so worried about diversification in showdowns. In general, there's less players in your lineup, less players in the player pool, so it's going to be harder to diversify anyways. So this result is okay with me. So I'm down 183 lineups. I need 5, right? Okay. Well, second thing I would probably do, and I'm going to turn this one off, is probably go do some geometric mean formula, right? So I could do it for the exact contest I'm playing in. The way that I typically do it, just to save time, is I will just use a filter and try and filter out the highest 10 to 20% of geometric mean lineups. So here in this example, that'd be like 200 to 400 lineups. So I think this geometric mean of 27 gets me to 335. That's like right in that range for me. So this is perfect, right? So I got my geo mean formula. I got my ROI formula. That takes me from 183 down to 92 lineups. And I'm getting, I'm zoning in on the lineups I want to consider, for my 5 lineups here, right? So this is good so far. I'd be about ready to start picking some lineups here. So I'm going to get an average projection, average ROI metric. And then I'm just going to check these, right? Like, hey, am I okay with my exposures? Am I okay with my flex plays, right? So like, this is interesting. Maybe I'm of the opinion like, hey, I have concerns about Bailey Zapp. Okay, great. I can come in here and I can manage some exposure, right? I'm going to come in here and say, hey, I don't want him in all 5 of my lineups. Maybe I only want him in like 60%, right? Okay, great. I go in, I apply that. And then it's going to go and find a couple lineups without him. Okay, lineup it looks like 21 and 23. All things seem good there. And then, I'm just doing some risk management, right? I'm checking some things. If I don't think Bailey Zapp's going to do good, maybe then I don't want so many shares of Jerry Jeudy. So then maybe I only want 2 lineups with him, right? I drop it down to 40, click apply. Okay, great. So we're managing some risk to Jeudy. We've managed some risk to Zapp here in the flex. I saw my 5 lineups and I'm pretty good, right? I'm happy with this and I'm ready to save it. So then I would click save. Okay, it's going to save it. I can either click this banner or I can click the download arrow on the left and downloads the file. Always make sure it says entries. It's the entries one. That's the one you want. And you'd be all set. All right. Thank you so much. That was what I was looking for in regards to the group rule. You're welcome. And Sam said, can you sort by ROI on the starter plan? If not, what are the similar steps? Good question. So you cannot sort by ROI on the standard plan. But what I would do is I would just, and this is going to be done for you automatically. Okay. You're going to be on the single game Saber score sorting metric. This is the only thing that's different. Okay. Your sorting metric is different, but all of the other things, right? All of the risk management, all of the filters or rules, right? All of those things are the same. So you can just, even though you don't have, an ROI filter, even though you don't have, a geo mean filter, right? You could do a geometric mean rule. So you go to rules, you go to aggregate, and then you say my own geometric mean no more than X. Okay. If you're doing it this way, then I would do the formula. If you're looking for like a bigger breakdown on how that works, in our help docs, we have this video, how do ownership product and ownership geometric mean work. I'll drop that here in the YouTube chat. This would be a good video to show you how to get that done. But let's say that, you're doing it for this contest, right? Okay, I go over to contests. I just see how many entries I have. So 1902. So then I would come in here and then I would say, hey, maybe I don't want to play lineups duplicated more than 10 times, right? So I do 10, which is the number of dupes I'm shooting for, divided by 1902, which is the number of entries in the contest. You put parentheses around that, take that to the power of 1 divided by the number of players in the lineup, which is 6. Click equals 41.6. So this is a huge geo mean, right? What I would do is I would just come in here, set my rule, and say, hey, my own product or my own geometric mean no more than 41.6, right? So that's the calculator said 0.416. We would just round the decimal place 2 points, and then I would get my rule of 41.6. I would set that before the build. I would save it, and then I would run my lineups. So the geometric mean filter I talked about goes to a rule, and then you use the single game saber score sorting metric. Sam said, would you use single game filter on the 2-game slate today, or is that only for Showdown? So the single game is only for Showdown. For the 2-game classic slate today, I would stick, it's going to be by default this small slate saber score. So small slate for us, we consider any slate with 2 to 5 games, and then large slate is single game is specific to mostly like Showdown type formats. If you're playing like I don't think it's called single game, but like I was thinking like NASCAR, something like that. Some of those like 6-player formats. Kind of any sport where like you're trying to find that like one optimal lineup. MMA, something like that. I think MMA it's called Sim Diversity 10 though. All right. Question. All the players' exposures I adjust pre-lock got reset in swap. Anyway, I can keep the original exposures. Yes, absolutely. So I can't demo this right now because there's not like a late swap slate in progress. But basically, when you click the green late swap button, okay, so you come in, you click late swap, you're going to get a pop-up. And in the pop-up, in the bottom left corner, there is going to be a setting option. It will say default by, like that's the primary selection is default, which means a fresh build, blank build. You can switch it in that drop down to your last build or however many builds you have. So if you have settings in build 2 that you want to carry over, you would switch from default to build 2 in that drop down. Okay. I wish I could demo this right now. But there's like no long-term slate, multi-day slate going on, unfortunately. But that's what you would do. So switch the drop down in the late swap pop-up from default to build 2 or build 1 or wherever your settings are. All right. Good stuff so far. Let me jump back in the Discord real quick. See how things are going over here. Okay, cool. Caught up there. A couple more questions rolling in. You never recommend taking players out or X out one team like the Browns today. I think it's fine to curate your player pool. If you want to, this is the way I think about it. If there are players in your lineup who do bad, who make you upset, like, oh my God, I knew I shouldn't have played that guy. I would probably just remove them up front, right? Curating your player pool is like totally okay, in my opinion. And, it just helps you to get lineups that look the way you actually want them to look, and like the way that like makes you comfortable, right? The most important thing is that you enter lineups that like you're happy with, regardless of like what the outcome happens. And one of the best ways to do that is curating your player pool, right? And then at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it's in my opinion, it's better to be like, well, there's no one else to blame but myself. So that I find some, peace with that usually. And then over time, if you're new to SaberSim, you could slowly start to trust it more and more and more, and then figure out, where you do want to trust it, where you want to manually intervene, etc. All right, next question. I saw a video last week that you like to use average projection in slates on starter plan. Could you explain that, please? Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the 2-game NFL slate today. I'll talk about it a little bit there. And we'll just run a fresh build here. I'm going to come in. Let's just build 500 lineups. A couple projection adjustments. All right, building 500 lineups here. So let's say I'm building this on the starter plan, right? I'm trying to build some lineups for today. Okay, lineups are finishing. Cool. So look, defaults to small slate saber score. Typically defaults to the 10K to 50K entries range. If you're mostly playing contests that are bigger than that, just come in and switch it, right? Switch to the 50K plus. Maybe you're playing like mostly the big 20 maxes and things like that. Cool to come in and change it. Okay. So the reason I say I like to use this average projection aggregate metric is mostly due to what we see on our build review show when we study lineups in contest flashback, where sim average score does matter, right? You don't need the highest sim average score, but you need to be within some range, right? There's kind of like a floor we generally see for some of the top lineups. Like, hey, top lineups are between, 135 and 140. If you're at like 131, you're sacrificing a little bit too much projection, okay? So that's like what we normally see, right? So with Saber Score, couple things, right? So we're building 500 lineups. I always recommend scrolling down to the last lineup in my set, because anytime you make a change, you want to see how far down in your build the builder has to go to meet your change. And then second thing, right, is we don't have this like very clear and distinct measuring stick. We don't have like, hey, this lineup is negative ROI. We don't get that with Saber Score. There's not like, hey, a 80 Saber Score is positive and like a 79 Saber Score is negative. We don't have that. It just doesn't work the same. So what we recommend with Saber Score is try and stay in the top like 25 to 50% of your pool if you can, and then don't sacrifice too much projection for diversity, for max and min exposure requests, etc. Right? So normally the way I would do this is use my Saber Score, adjust it for the entries for the contest I'm primarily optimizing for, set up my average projection aggregate metric, scroll over here so I can see my exposures and my leverages. I'm just going to bring my leverage over. And then start adjusting your min uniques, right? So, okay, I go from 1 unique to 2. My average projection dropped slightly, took me down to lineup 23. Okay, seems all right. Min unique of 3. Okay, I dropped from like 124 point something to 122.8. Okay, that takes me down to lineup 63. What do my leverages look like at this point, right? I'm starting to sacrifice a little more projection. Maybe I don't want this much leverage still, right? Maybe I want to go a little bit further. Okay, cool. So I go to min uniques of 4. Projection drops more. My leverage is starting to flatten out, right? No player over 20% leverage. And then now I come in here and look, and I'm at lineup 194. Okay, so we try and stay the top like 25 to 50%. 50% of 500 would be 250. So we're approaching that, right? But I'm happy with my leverages. I would basically stop here, right? I wouldn't recommend going any further. So like that is kind of the process that you want to think about when you are going through your builds and making adjustments and things on the starter plan. So use those data points, projection, exposure, leverage, how far you're going down in your pool, and try and settle on, a set of lineups that you're comfortable with from there. All right. Good stuff there. And taking a peek in Discord, looks like we're all caught up there. Looks like we're all caught up here in the YouTube chat. Daniel said, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. You are welcome. So next question, do you recommend autofill or direct fill? Depends what you're trying to accomplish, right? It's important to know the differences. And then you got to figure out which one works best for your process, okay? Say you're playing one contest, right? I would just use direct fill. Direct fill allows you to see the lineups before they go into your contest, allows you to tinker, etc., right? Autofill, basically the way autofill works, well, how about we just do this? You know what? I have some entries for FanDuel. Do I have them in here? I don't. All right. Sam said, thank you. You're welcome. I'm just grabbing my entry file for FanDuel right now. And FanDuel logged me out. Always fun when they do that. All right. Upcoming. Let's go to contests. Upload. All right, so we got an entry file for FanDuel. I'm just going to use this old build here. Not a huge deal. So differences with direct and auto, right? So right now, we got to run a contest sim. Let's run the contest sim here. And let's move some things around. I don't really want to see these. Okay, contest sim is run. Sorting by target ROI, good. All right, so what do we want to do here? So we want to talk about the differences between direct and autofill. Okay, what autofill does, I just want to be clear. Direct, you can do it in direct fill manually. Autofill just does it like 10 times faster, okay? So what autofill does, we'll start with autofill, is it unchecks all the contests. It selects the top one. It goes top down. It sorts the lineups in your pool, which are these lineups over here, okay? Sorts them by whatever the rank by column says, which is this contest-specific ROI. So when it says target ROI, what it's doing is it's sorting the lineups by the name of this contest, that ROI. So that is the same as going in here and then saying, okay, I want to go and find the NFL pooch punt and sort by this contest's ROI. Okay. So it sorts the lineups by this contest ROI, applies any uniques, applies any min or max exposures, applies any filters, and then it fills the lineups, puts the lineups into this contest, and then it goes, and then it does the next contest, and then it does the next one, right? So to demo this, right, if I were to just come in here and click save, okay, and if I'm going to use unique rank, I would recommend sorting by prize pool, because once a lineup is used, it won't be used again. So I would save, and this is going to take a grand total of 5 seconds to do, okay? So it did all of that in 5 seconds. Now let's go and do the same thing, but we're going to do it in direct fill. Okay, so if I'm in direct fill, I would come in to the drop down here. I would uncheck all the contests, check the top one. You're going to see this lineups refresh. Okay, this processing, it's moving lineups around. It's figuring out, hey, how should the lineups be sorted based on this specific contest sim ROI. Okay, so then it sorts them. We could come in here and apply any minimax exposures, any uniques I want, whatever. And then I can click save. Okay, I'm going to save 5 lineups to this one contest. And then I could go to the next contest, and then I could do it again. Okay, so then this is me mimicking autofill, but it is happening a lot slower. Okay, so the differences here are that with direct fill, you get to see your exposures first before they go into the contest, right? I can see my exposures. Autofill, the exposures generate after you click save. Okay, so I click save, and then I can come in here. So there's pros and cons to both methods. I personally use autofill because I don't really care to see what the lineups look like up front. I'm approaching it more a little bit from like a macro perspective, but some follow-ups. So it's fairly similar to an entry method. It's just a process choice, so it does not help with diversification at all. So I'm better off if I want to diversify to use direct fill and do it that way. Thank you for the demo. Couple important thing that I didn't mention, right? If you are using direct fill and you have all of your contests selected at the same time, what we do is we use an average ROI, which is this. It says, let me remove the question. Here it says average of selected contests, which is 297 ROI. This is the mean ROI if we added up all of these individual ROIs across all the contests and sorted by that. Okay, it could be a little, in my opinion, bad to do this, mostly because, like, say for instance, like we see one contest here with like 297% ROI for the NFL Rush. Okay, cool. But then we see a single entry where this lineup has a 47% ROI. So that tells me, like, hey, this lineup is actually not a great lineup for this single entry, but it's a good lineup for like some of these bigger, 20 max, 150 max contests, right? The average kind of throws that off. So the only time that changes is when you have less contests selected, right? So if I have one contest selected, it will be that specific contest. But if I have all the contests selected, then it will be the average of all of those. So that's the other important thing to remember with direct fill, is that it is however many contests you have chosen, it is averaging those results to grade the lineups, to sort them, to rank them. So and then in regards to diversification, right? Min uniques, if you have all the contests selected, will be across all of these. If you're in autofill, and even say if you have 3 uniques on, right? Or 3 uniques. So this is within the contest, right? So like the lineups within this contest will have 3 uniques, but the lineups between the contests could have 1 unique. So that's another consideration there, right? You might get better portfolio diversification in direct fill, and then in autofill you get like I think it's intra contest diversification, which is just the lineups within a single contest. So hope that helps. There's never like a wrong or right answer to using one. It's more important to just like understand what they do, how they work, their best use cases, and then figure out which one works better for your process. Because everybody's process is different, and some people, I talk to people like, hey, I literally never use autofill. And then some people are like, oh yeah, I only use autofill. And nobody's in the wrong in that situation. All right. Good stuff there. I think we're all caught up here. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Good luck in your contests all weekend. I will be back on Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next office hours show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.